Hello, in this tutorial you'll learn how to add melodic interest to a given chord progression. In the most versatile version of melodic figuration in the Schillinger system, this is achieved with a mix of leading tones, such as suspensions, anticipations, passing and auxiliary tones. The examples demonstrate how to obtain moving parts and insert motifs. This video tutorial is about how to embellish a given chord progression with melodic quality by inserting various types of leading tones. It is the most versatile form of melodic figuration in the Schillinger system of musical composition. The two approaches, called neutral and thematic figuration, will be demonstrated in a set of examples in various musical styles. If you like the video tutorials on this channel, please consider a one-time PayPal donation or become a regular supporter as a patron. Let's picture the context of this technique. Here is the overview of the content of the two-volume book set of the Schillinger system. Musical composition aspects are presented in a series of 12 books. This episode is focusing on Book 5, the Special Theory of Harmony. There you learn how to write more or less traditional harmony with chords in thirds. The final 5 chapters are about how to modify a given chord progression. One such approach is to use melodic figuration, and the two main methods, neutral and thematic figuration, are discussed in chapter 23, the basis for this tutorial. This diagram shows melodic figuration in overview, which Schillinger defines as the process of evolving leading tones in a given harmonic continuity. The various types of leading tones are suspensions, anticipations, passing and auxiliary tones. When these move into chordal tones, they produce directional units. Melodic figuration is the process of inserting these units in the harmonic continuity. The two branches, neutral and thematic figuration, yield moving parts. When inserting a motif, we achieve melodic interest in a given harmonic context. Let's summarize the leading tone types from the Schillinger chapters 20 to 22, beginning with suspensions. An example is shown here in the lead part, where the suspended pitch is held over when the chord changes from G dominant 7 to C major, then moves diatonically by a descending step from D, corresponding to chordal function 9, down into C, chordal function 8 or 1, the root. The suspension implies a dissonant interval, a temporarily sounding extended chord. I did a series of tutorials on how to handle these high tension level chords. In the case of an anticipation, a chordal function of the target chord is played early. Here the example is the chordal function 3, the pitch E in the C major triad that is sounding in the previous bar over the F major second inversion position triad. A passing tone connects two adjacent chordal functions, such as 1 and 3 or 3 and 5. Here you see an example of an ascending and a descending passing tone. The latter example also involves a chord change. The auxiliary tone is a stressed non-chordal tone, such as the appoggiatura on a strong beat, moving stepwise into a chordal function. Here you see the B ascending to C. We may approach the chordal tone with a semitone or whole tone step from below or above. The neighboring note pattern starts on a chordal function, moves to the next lower or higher step and returns to the starting pitch. Finally, you may use a sequence of 2 or more auxiliary tones. The second element is the given harmonic continuity. This means a chord progression in any system of harmony. The 4-part harmony shown here in the diatonic system of harmony for the key of G major includes various chord structure types, root movement, and correct handling of dissonant intervals for the 7th and 9th chords. We may encounter close versus open position voicings, chordal function doublings, and inversion positions. These subjects are discussed extensively in the early chapters in the Schillinger Book 5. Listen to this harmonic continuity. This will be the basis of the first melodic figuration example shown in a minute. You'll see how the application of leading tones yields moving parts, suggesting imitation and counterpoint. Thematic figuration has film and game music potential with a leitmotif character. The first set of techniques is called neutral melodic figuration. We insert a mix of the leading tone types into a given harmonic continuity. This may be done freely, or instead we use prior planning of the sequence of parts. I'll demonstrate these alternatives, but in both cases you'll hear less static, more independent parts. The case of free leading tone application is shown for the G major chord progression you heard earlier. Here is the 4-part setting, and we'll respect the close position voicing and given voice leading when inserting a mix of leading tone types. One thing to keep in mind is that you should avoid voice crossing between adjacent parts. Here's the result when we insert a mix of the various types in the parts, in random order. This is the free approach to neutral figuration. The example contains a number of suspensions, chordal functions that generate dissonant intervals when held over into the next chord, and a number of anticipations, that is, chordal functions from the target chord played early. These are the instances of diatonic and chromatic passing tones that connect chordal functions. And you'll also find a number of neighboring notes. Next, I've marked the set of auxiliary tones on strong beats, the semitone or whole tone appoggiaturas. And finally, a number of multiple auxiliary notes. This free approach becomes a kind of puzzle, where I may have to correct my example while inspecting the intervals between the moving parts. Listen to the result for string quartet, which now has a counterpoint flavor, with the rhythmic groove changing from the whole note to the 8th note, the smallest time unit. In the alternative neutral figuration approach, we predetermine the sequence, the order in which we'll insert leading tones into the voices. This may be written as a mathematical equation from which the terms may undergo permutation and combination, a process introduced in Schillinger's theory of rhythm. We return to the G major chord progression, but now use the sequence defined at the top, a string of 5 terms that list in what part the leading tones will go. These may include simultaneous leading tone occurrences, for example notated as P2 over P3 in the first element. The leading tone type used predominantly here is the neighboring note. In this example I did not use permutation, but all parts occur in every term in the equation. Listen to this short jazz waltz phrase for trio. The thematic figuration approach is somewhat stricter, in the sense that we organize a set of chordal functions and leading tones into a motif before applying this to the chord progression. Again, the sequence of voices where we apply the motif may be free or pre-planned. Now you learn about constant versus variable chordal functions, starting with the former. The motif approach is used for chords in thirds. Pitches from the theme are interpreted as dyads of adjacent chordal functions or triadic subsets. The first chordal function pitch determines the part where the motif will be inserted. This yields a one motif per chord result. Next, we may have to correct adjacent part voice leading to prevent crossing. Since most motifs will have arpeggio character, we need an open or very open position chord voicing. In case of mixed open and close voicing, you may skip the bars with the latter type. When the motif first and last chordal function are different, you may have to modify still another part to maintain complete chords. You'll see these aspects demonstrated in the examples. We'll use a 4-part chord progression in C Mixolydian. Note the open position voicing that creates room in the pitch domain for inserting a motif, minimizing the voice crossing danger. The harmony contains triads and 7 chords in root and inverted position. Root movement includes many positive diatonic cycles, establishing strong cadential character. The voice leading is smooth, mostly stepwise, with correct dissonance handling. Here's the first motif, a mix of chordal functions and leading tones. We start with an auxiliary tone, an ascending directional unit. Over the C major triad, we then have the 3 chordal functions 5, 1, 3 as an arpeggio, and the motif closes with the 9-to-1 appoggiatura. This constant chordal function motif is applied to the C Mixolydian harmony in the part sequence at the top. This order is determined by the current part that has chordal function 5. The result is the one motif per chord texture. In bar 6 you see the modification of part 2, preventing voice crossing and compensating for the fact that the arpeggio motif in part 3 moves from function 5 to 1. There are more cases of modified parts to maintain complete chords. Note how these return to the pitch from the original setting. Listen to the result for wind quartet, which has moving parts with imitative character. The next motif contains chordal functions 1, 3, 5 and 7. Again we find a number of auxiliary leading tones. The theme starts on E, the 3 in the C major triad, and ends on the root. The chord quality is affected, becoming a 7th chord. The starting chordal function determines the order of parts where the motif will be applied. The part sequence is shown here at the top. Again, there is a single motif statement per chord, and we must correct the voice leading in other parts to avoid adjacent part voice crossing in bars 2, 3, 5, 8 and 9, and maintain complete chords in measures 1, 4 and 6 to 8. The creation of 7th chords changes the overall mood of this setting. For chords in the thirds, we may compose motifs with subsets from all chordal functions between the root 1 and 13. My final constant chordal function example involves the subset 5, 7 and 9 shown here. This time the motif starts with a chordal function, then a passing tone, a neighboring tone on the 7, pitches B, A, B, continues with the 9 and returns with 2 auxiliary tones to the initial chordal function. It's an arpeggio with a limited range. So now we insert the motif in the part that contains chordal function 5, one occurrence for each chord. These now have extended 9th chord structure flavor. As usual, I've adapted other parts to prevent crossing and maintain full chords. But I also took liberty to insert free, neutral embellishment to create moving other parts as well. The alternative thematic figuration technique is to allow transposed versions of the original motif by thirds. This corresponds to the variable chordal function approach. Now we are free to apply the motif in any part. Again, we will probably require open position chord voicing, edit other parts to prevent crossings, etc. A fresh option is to use multiple transposed motif statements over a single chord, thus controlling the chord tension level. We may also use predetermined part sequence planning. Let's see some examples. The first example is a single motif with a variable chordal function application in a harmonic continuity in G Aeolian mode. This is the open position 4-part voicing in the diatonic system of harmony. The progression contains triads, 7th and 9th chords. The harmonic rhythm is no longer one bar for each chord. We find root and inversion position chords. The example is based on positive diatonic root cycles only. There is one passing 6/4 group in measures 3 to 5. Voice leading is smooth, mostly stepwise with correct dissonance handling. The motif is shown here with an arpeggio pattern on chordal functions 1, 3 and 5 and a number of directional units. The total compass is the 9th interval. In a transposed form, the chordal functions may become 3, 5 and 7, or 5, 7 and 9, or even higher. Look at this reduced score and, as we zoom in, notice how the motif starts on different chordal functions. For the chords that play for 2 or more bars, find the multiple motif statements on root and 3 in bars 1 and 2 over G minor, and on 1 and 5 over the E flat major 7th chord. The 9th compass of the motif leads to quite some edits in neighboring parts to prevent crossing adjacent parts. There are also leaps in other parts in order to maintain complete chords. And finally, again I added a few neutral leading tones to embellish and create moving parts. Here is the setting for solo piano. The higher chordal functions create a mellow, melancholic mood with imitative counterpoint character. final example is somewhat longer. Again, a demonstration of the thematic figuration technique. A number of things are different here. Firstly, the progression is in the diatonic-symmetric system, meaning that the bass part is diatonic from the C major scale. There's a specific tutorial on that subject. The selection of chord structures is independent, however, and that yields a number of non-diatonic pitches. As is the case for all thematic figuration examples, there is open position voicing. The progression includes triads, 7th and 9th chords, in root and inversion position, and with both positive and negative root cycles. Chord labels are shown at the top. Note the rather peculiar chord sequence near the end. There is careful voice leading, as always, I dare say. Also different is the use of two motifs with different character. Motif 1 uses 3 chordal functions, an embellished 3-1-5 arpeggio with 16th note rhythm, while the other uses longer duration values and uses 4 chordal functions. Both have a total compass of a 7th interval. We'll apply both motifs in various transposed forms. The harmonic continuity was modified. I overlaid a harmonic rhythm using the distributive power technique from the theory of rhythm. The capital T stands for the duration of a single bar. The formula indicates how chords may last for either 4, 2 or a single measure, as you hopefully will recognize in the worked out example. The orchestral version is based on this 2-page reduced score. We zoom in at the top, and here I've marked the harmonic rhythm, the C major triad over 8 bars, followed by the E dominant 7 over 4 bars, etc. Also, I reversed some terms in the equation, as shown at the top of the page. Locally, I modified the harmony with alternating chords and the rhythm based on permutations of a series of 4 and 2/8 notes. This creates contrast with the thematic figuration approach. The occurrence of the motifs is shown here. You'll find double motif statements over a single static or changing chord, and the motifs starting on different chordal functions. As the example progresses, you'll hear different instrumental forms in the accompaniment. Also, the theme is moving through the orchestra sections in order to prevent monotony from the many motif statements. What I did not do is to use the option to modify these themes after a number of times by leaving out certain notes, embellishing motif 2 with the longer durations, use rhythmic augmentation or diminution. Instead, it is a fairly strict implementation, and here is the result. After this demonstration of how to create a longer piece from a 14 measures chord progression and 2 motifs, we may summarize this tutorial. Through melodic figuration with combinations of leading tones, we create more interesting moving parts for a given static chord progression. You saw the 2 main approaches, neutral and thematic figuration. Use free leading tone application or work from a prior planning of the voice sequence. After composing a theme, apply it as constant or variable chordal functions. I demonstrated this set of techniques in short and somewhat longer examples in various musical styles that will hopefully inspire you to use this Schillinger technique in your own compositions. The information density is high, and you may want to read this text, diagrams and score examples in the companion document on Patreon. If you enjoyed watching this tutorial, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. I do welcome one-time PayPal donations and new patrons that support creation of these video tutorials. You'll find the links in the description below. Visit the website for more content or for purchasing ebooks on musical analysis, arranging for orchestra and Schillinger rhythm. See you next time and thanks for watching.